All right, we're back again. How about that? It's the Friday FARcast with Robert Phoenix. Well, that was a really interesting turn of events, I have to say. I was doing the show and trying to get into the rhythm of the show, the rhythm of the flow, and all of a sudden, my computer stopped working. And basically what happened was that my internet connection got severed. And what's interesting is I have two computers. And my other computer, which is sitting right next to me, that computer was on the internet just fine. The computer that I used to run the show was not allowing me to be online. So I got into 7 minutes and 49 seconds of the show, and then it was cut off. So to recap, let me see what we got here. I sent them a message. Okay, I'll be happy to help you. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. So to recap here, I was just going over, let's see. Here we go. All right. I was just going over what's happened over the last 24 hours to try to understand, put this into context, and how we got to this stage of accelerated conflict. We talked about some of this yesterday on my show, and we talked about how using the pretext for the gas was, for all intents and purposes, a very deadly false flag, and we wasted no time in going there and asserting our will and firing 60 Tomahawk cruise missiles on the 6th of April, which was yesterday. And now we go into Friday, and it's the end of the news cycle, and then we're into Saturday, Sunday, and we're, doing whatever we do, and this gets buried. Of course, it always happens at the end of the week. The moon was in Leo, which was on Trump's ascendant, and also on his warlike Mars in Leo in the first house. So it probably made for, at the very least, some kind of royal decree. Okay, what do we have now? Okay. It's a little paranoid now. I haven't had stuff like this happen to me since I was in California, when a lot of really strange phenomena was occurring back then, which I don't really want to get into. I'd rather just leave it in the past. So one of the things I was talking about was this battle between Steve Bannon and Jared Kushner. And Kushner seems to be gaining more and more power inside the Trump administration. And I want to go into this piece that I was reading today, and it was Steve Bannon calls Jared Kushner a cuck. So just go over to Spreaker right now, and you'll find me. For everybody that's on Facebook, I'll do live Spreaker help. There we go. That's it. Thank you, Otto. I appreciate that. I like having this real-time connection with people. So you just go to Spreaker and you can type in my name and you'll find me. I'm still trying to figure out how I can program the show on a daily basis, which I've not figured out yet. And I'm a smart guy, so I've figured it out. All right, so I was reading from the Daily Beast, and it was Steve Bannon calls Jared Kushner a cuck and globalist behind his back. Donald Trump's two closest aides are fighting nonstop and often face-to-face, officials say. And it's even uglier in private. Donald Trump's chief strategist, Stephen Bannon, has called the president's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, a cuck and a globalist during a time of high tension between the two top aides, several Trump administration officials told the Daily Beast. The fighting between Kushner and Bannon has been nonstop in recent weeks, according to sources who spoke on condition of anonymity. It's been an open secret that Bannon and Kushner often clash face-to-face, according to senior officials. One official said Bannon has lately complained about Kushner trying to shiv him and push him out the door. Shiv is a knife that they use in prison. Okay, let's see what we got here. Let's see, okay. Okay, did get that. Yeah, I'm broadcasting live now. If you can hear me, yeah, see, there's auto. You can hear me. Let me just see if there's more here. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, this is so I'm getting some real-time information thrown my way. So the Army yesterday, this is what I was looking for. This is the April 6th sort of day I was looking for. And I hadn't punched April 6th up yet. But Beverly sent this, and she said that the Army commemorated the 100th anniversary of the U.S. entering World War I. That was yesterday. How about that? That was yesterday. Let's see. Yeah, everybody can hear me now. Okay. All right, so let me get back into this. I posted this on Facebook. Some of you may have read this. But this is what the article says from the Daily Beast. Steve recently vented to us about Jared being a globalist and a cuck. He actually said cuck, as in conservative. The administration official told the Daily Beast conservatives a portmanteau of cuckold and conservative has become a favorite slur on the right, used sexually and racially charged version of rhino, a Republican in name only. Globalist is a term typically used by nationalist pro-Trump right-wingers against political opponents. However, the term has also come under fire for times carrying anti-Semitic tones. Kushner is Jewish. I think this is where my show got cut off. Bannon is a self-described nationalist and a longtime Republican. Bannon's an American. He's an American. Well, Kushner was, until his father-in-law ran for president, a lifelong liberal and Democratic donor. So Kushner he changed flags. That's all he did. He just changed flags. He brought down one flag and up went another flag. And it says there's a big fight going on, one senior official said. It's all about policy. There's tension between them on trade, healthcare, immigration, taxes, terrorism, you name it. The White House and Bannon did not reply or respond to emails seeking comment. One senior Trump aide said that Bannon was also frustrated with Kushner continuing to bring in Zeke Emanuel to discuss health care options, for instance. The aide said Emanuel has had 3 White House meetings, including one with Trump. Emanuel is known as Dr. Death because he was the guy that was bringing the death panels into Obamacare, widely known and called a eugenicist by certain people in the media. I'm not calling him a eugenicist. Other people have, though. Let's be clear on that. Emanuel was one of the architects of Obamacare, and here comes Jared Kushner bringing him back in. Trump had to sit down with him. Astrologically, we talked about this before, Jared Kushner's true node in Leo, which aspires towards rulership. Some form of rulership in Leo is right on Trump's Pluto. In the 12th house, the power behind the scenes, the power behind the throne. He's got his finger on the trigger. He's got his finger on Trump's Pluto trigger. Now, one would think that Pluto would be informing the true node. It is kind of outranks the true node. But I'm not sure this is the case. On the other side, you've got Mike Pence and his Pluto right on Trump's ascendant. And then there's Steve Bannon. What's interesting is that Saturn has been on Trump's moon for a while now. It's retrograding. Saturn's in Sagittarius. Steve Bannon's in Sagittarius, and Sagittarius is moving away. Saturn's moving away from Trump's moon. So perhaps this movement, this retrograde movement, might actually coincide with Bannon's movement further away from the source. And apparently, Jared Kushner's been texting Joe Scarborough every morning and feeding him things. And some of it is very anti-Bannon. Trump apparently also took great offense at a Saturday Night Live skit where he was portrayed as the bumbling president, of course, and always by Alec Baldwin. And Steve Bannon played the Grim Reaper, who eventually takes over Trump's job at his desk and becomes the de facto president. He's the puppet master. That's how SNL portrayed him. And Trump didn't like it. If I were Trump, I would not watch Saturday Night Live. I just wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't pay attention to it. I would shun it. I would dismantle as much of my intention and attention from it as possible. So Steve Bannon apparently went to a National Security Council meeting today, even though he's been removed from that group. Neil Gorsuch, by the way, has been approved as the next Chief Justice. No, not Chief Justice. The next member of the Supreme Court. John Roberts is the Chief Justice. He's the next member of the Supreme Court. Neil Gorsuch, member of the CFR, belonging to one of those Fruit Loop churches out in Denver or Boulder. I think that's where he's from. He's been approved. So now we're going to have 12 judges again. Rex Tillerson, we're going to get to Syria. I just got to get you caught up on some stuff, right? Rex Tillerson has formed, or is going to form, a global task force to figure out how to get Assad out of Syria. So we've gone from not being engaged in Syria. Basically, Trump says, I'm going to let Assad kind of do his own thing. I'm going to back off of Assad. This is what he said. And then 2 days later, we have this gas attack. And then Trump does a complete 180, which he's wont to do with that Sun-Uranus conjunction in Gemini with a true node, and says, hey, let's fire 50 Tomahawk or 60 Tomahawk missiles and kill some people. Now, the left is making a really big deal out of this. Like, this is Trump, this is who. And I'm not supporting what Trump is saying or done at all, by any means, at all. But the left has said, this he's showing his true colors. See. Well, Obama was bombing the shit with these drones in Afghanistan for almost the entirety of his presidency. It was like Drone Tuesday. Or Drone Thursday, whatever they call it. Taco Tuesday, Drone Thursday. And they had a list of names that they'd go after. So this is an open act of aggression. But the aggression's been going on for years. I mean, it's a mess. It's really a mess. It's gotten bad. And we all thought that if we just went in and took out Saddam Hussein, it would all be okay. It would all be over. The nightmare of 9/11, the humiliation, would all be over. We'd be justified. We'd have our pride back. We'd have our eye for an eye. That hasn't been the case. Not even close. So here we are, 16 years later, lurching towards another war. And apparently, there's a lot of appetite for it out there. A lot of people on the far right are clamoring, or not even the far right, the right, they're clamoring for war. This is what John McCain wanted and Lindsey Graham wanted. This is what Marco Rubio wanted. This is what they've been really horny for. And Obama kind of drug his heels. He I don't think Obama's heart was really into it. I think they were willing and able to create ISIS and look the other way and feed them information. But I don't think he wanted to commit any U.S. troops. And clearly a lot of his generals didn't want to either. But not these guys. They'll go full on, absolutely full on. Another thing that I was reading yesterday, in today's show. There we go. Are we going to get this up? Oh, good. The internet's working. This is from Veterans Today. And this has to do with the actual gas attacks. Now, on Facebook, I posted who was responsible. If it wasn't Assad, and I don't think it really wasn't Assad, why would he do that? I mean, really, why would he? I mean, think about this. Let's just think about this from a logical perspective. Okay, they supposedly don't have any chemical weapons because the Russians. This is one of the chess moves that Putin made against Obama. He removed the chemical weapons, so there are no chemical weapons, and that shut down John Kerry and all these other guys that are sitting there scratching their heads. Well, if they don't have chemical weapons, we can't really do anything. So now there's the chemical weapons. Now, why would Assad do that? They had these guys on the run. They beat them in Aleppo. They were pushing them back. They were on the road to victory, to vanquishing, the forces that have been accumulated in that area. Al Qaeda, Al Nusra, ISIS, ISIL, Daesh, you name it, the whole gang. They were winning thanks to the help of the Russians. And then they're going to go out and gas people. And they're going to know that on a global scale that would be akin to like a Holocaust crime and would invite the United States and whomever else to come in and make amends. You think that they would actually do that? A short-term gain like that? I think that would be idiotic. I mean, that's just from a strategic point or perspective on their end. And technically, they don't even have the gas. Now, Rex Tillerson, Tyrannosaurus Rex, is saying that the Russians didn't do a very good job. That this is the Russians' fault, you see? Because they said there wasn't any gas. There wasn't any chemicals, and now it's the Russians' fault. So we're dragging the Russians in on this. And Tillerson is putting together the Justice League, and they're going to go in and take Assad out. This is a big deal. This is not a one-time kind of flurry of missiles disabling an airport over in Syria. An airport, by the way, which air facility, which I think it's the same one. If not, it's in the spirit of air facilities that was being fired at by Israel. Oh, I said it. Am I going to last on today's show for more than 10 minutes now? Yeah, and that's part of the news cycle. I'm sorry, I'm not saying anything that's not outside a part of the news cycle. So what do we got here? Somebody did a comment. Yeah, somebody else. So who was responsible for these attacks? The gas. Ron Paul says it's the Mossad. Here's what Gordon Duff says over at Veterans Today. He says that it was the white helmets. They killed the kids for the fake gas attacks. The white helmets are an NGO. Of course, George Clooney made a big film about them, produced by Netflix. Won an Oscar. These really brave men who go into the thick of the battle and risk life and limb and danger to be the soldiers of peace. And really, it's a bunch of horse shit. I'm just going to read you a little bit. You could go to Veterans Today and you can find this. This article went live yesterday. It says President Trump is now threatening to take America into a war with Syria. We know that. He says a war, he says, is justified by evidence he has received from the Syrian white helmets. We will provide beyond any doubt that this is a deep state organization, a melding of CIA, Al Qaeda, and Britain's intelligence services, and we now have slam dunk proof that Trump and the fake news MSM are and always have been in lockstep, playing us all. Actor George Clooney knew that the organization Swedish Doctors for Human Rights had cited the White Helmets as child killers. when he produced the Oscar-winning propaganda video that may have led to this latest outrage. The organization sued her is very real, their work authoritative, and their indictment of the white helmets for killing children in order to stage propaganda videos would have been known to Clooney and Netflix. They went ahead anyway. Why? Moreover, Google itself is involved, at war with this group and others, censoring them from their search engines. The information here will be new for Americans. Please note that at no time has the White House or any Western media acknowledged the controversy regarding the white helmets, which we allege is part of al-Qaeda's propaganda operations. Nor is any mention of the dozens of proven gas attacks by FSA, ISIS, and al-Nusra, which are suddenly forgotten, as though by magic. The White Helmets supposedly are an independent NGO which receives up to $100 million from the CIA and UK Foreign Office dark project funding. It's a lot of money. Murdering children is their stock and trade, as we will prove, sharing headquarters with Turkish intelligence in Gaziantep, Turkey. This organization is far more a death squad than civil defense. Please review included videos. Okay, so if you go to Veterans Today, you'll see, where Gordon and the rest of these guys over there have put together a series of videos. Hold on, I have to have my energy drink. That moment brought to you by Energia, a natural energy shot. So he goes into great detail here that the white hats who provided the evidence to the White House and Trump are bought, sold, and paid for. And not only that, but were probably involved in the actual, unfortunately, execution of said people, including children. This is what we're up against here. These are the lies, the deceptions, the illusions, the misinformation, the disinformation. We're all having to sort through this. And these are biblical times. And if you're not a Christian, it doesn't really matter. These are biblical times. We're living in really intense, powerful, dangerous, revelatory biblical times. When we get to this level of outright deceit, lies, and illusion, and using the lies and the deceit and the illusion to move forward with very aggressive military action, to the point where we're on the brink of a global conflagration. This is pretty serious stuff. And I want to be funny, and I want to crack jokes, and I'd love to provide people with some irony with all this, so that we can kind of get through it. But this is not it's not a fun time. It's actually possibly a very, very dark time that we're headed towards. And there's more. There's always more. We also have apparently Rex Tillerson promoting, guess what, a carbon tax. How about that? Rex Tillerson promoting a carbon tax from within inside the White House. I wonder where they're getting those ideas from. The thing with Bannon and Jared Kushner is fascinating from an astrological perspective, because Kushner is a Capricorn and Bannon's a Sagittarius. And they're two very, very different energies. Kushner is, as a Capricorn, really invested in power. Capricorns dig power. And they like corporate power. And they like political power. And I love Capricorns. I think they're really amazing people. Don't get me wrong. I love all the signs. Trust me, I do. Even though I mess around with Geminis, I love Geminis. They're great. They're fun. They're interesting. They're a little wicked, but it's Gemini. But every side has its light side, and every side has its dark side. And the dark side of Gemini is sociopathic. The dark side of Gemini will do anything for power. Anything. And I've written about Jared Kushner, and I've written about his connections with certain groups. You can go on my website. You can read them. You can check it out. Follow. Just follow the links. Follow the trail, and you'll find out who he is. And Bannon, the Sagittarius, is much more philosophical, much more freedom-oriented. He's not going to come, even though he's made a lot of money. Ultimately, Bannon is coming from an ideological perspective. He's an ideologue. Jared Kushner is not an ideologue. Jared Kushner is into power. And they will assume any ideology as long as it gets them closer to the source of power, their control. I don't know if you realize this, but the Kushner home office has been at 666 Fifth Avenue for a while. I think they might have sold it, but 666 Fifth Avenue. I'm going to have to look at Jared Kushner's chart again. So this is pretty intense territory, and Russia is not going to. Russia's been amazingly calm and restrained, but they will guard their assets in Syria. And we talked about this yesterday, that this is going to be sort of the key that unlocks the war to Russia, because that's the war they really want. Sure, they want to move Assad out of there. They want to bring Syria into the World Bank, and they want to bring Syria into the IMF. They're one of those kind of rogue nation states that are outside of the control of the IMF and the World Bank, and they want them out. They want Assad out. They apparently want to put in King Abdullah from Jordan, and they want to bring in Syria into Jordanian rule. But ultimately, they want a war with Russia. If you listen to my podcast with the Kitchen Sink crew, we talk a lot about the year 1969, because that's when Chiron went into Aries the last time. And we're going to be going into Chiron and Aries very soon. So we're going to be dealing with war. We're going to be dealing with the notion of war and violence and our young men. And the United States will go through another Chiron return. That's coming up. Chiron comes back every 50 years. Remember, Trump was saying that we're going to have our 150th anniversary. That's in concert with the Chiron return, which is in the 4th house of the United States. And I would venture to say that every 50 years we're dealing with some kind of classic confrontation with war. If you go back to World War I, because if the Vietnam War was around 1967, 60. I mean, it was before then, right? But it really went to fever, kind of the fever pitch, 67, 68, 69. You go back 50 years before that. So that would be 1916. So that's World War I. So that was the other time we went into the other the previous time when Chiron was in Aries. So World War I, Vietnam, and here we go. 4th house. You go back to 1969 and you have the rise of power, the rise to power, people like Yasser Arafat. And then you had Assad's father taking power in 1969. So Arafat, Assad's father, and then you have Golda Meir becoming president of Israel, and it's really kind of the start of some of the terrorist stuff that takes place. So 1969 is a big year. We're coming into that Chiron and Aries and the affliction of war. And there's going to be a whole generation of people going through their Chiron return. And these people will have been born around 1967, 68, 69, especially 68, 69. And what are they, 70, right around there? Yeah. And how are they going to respond to this? Because generationally, Chiron represents some kind of theme, some kind of generational theme. Prior to Chiron and Aries, we had Chiron and Pisces, a group of people that over the course of their lives have become disaffected from faith, from their faith, looked into things like alcohol and drugs and other types of religions in order to deal with their lack of faith or their loss of faith. Chiron, Pisces, the death of God. And through that Chironic return, some of them have actually come back into a more grounded and orthodox relationship to their faith. You go back prior to that, and you have my group, which is the Chiron and Aquarius people, and we're sort of the renegades from Atlantis. The Chiron and Pisces people are heretics. They're heretical, and they've stood up. They stood up against the church, or left the church, or created their own religions. It's a Chiron and Pisces kind of generational template. Chiron and Aries are the wounded warriors. These are people that have incarnated through time from other battles and have to deal with the notion of war and have to deal with the notion of aggression. And of all the groups, I talked about this with Regina, of all the groups, women with Chiron and Aries have a difficult assignment because their wound is with men in general. And we're going to be staring that down. And, let's be clear. If Hillary Clinton was president, she'd probably be doing the same thing as Trump. If any of those guys were president, with maybe the exception of Rand Paul, they'd be doing the same thing. You bet your ass that Marco Rubio would be doing it. Marco Rubio was like quoting, parts of the Bible yesterday to justify, retribution on Syria. Give me a break. God, these people with their false piety, man. Ted Cruz would have done it. But Ted Cruz declaring war would be comical. He had that funny voice, the Ted Cruz voice. Today, we decided to strike against our foes in Syria. He had that weird kind of sing-songy voice. Could you imagine listening to Ted Cruz for 4 years? Oh my God. That would drive me nuts. Rand Paul's about the only voice of reason. Rand Paul should have been president. It's too bad. I like Rand Paul. He got better. I didn't like Rand Paul at first. But he's grown on me. He's the only guy. I tell you, Rand Paul, Dennis Kucinich ticket would have been amazing. I think Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich should have run together. But there would have been like two rejects from Lord of the Rings. Like two cast extras from Lord of the Rings. They're both somewhat elfin-like, don't you think? So it comes down to now, what are we going to do? We've got a bunch of people that are horny for war. They've got their war. They had all this money from AIPAC coming at them, which we knew was coming. Steve Bannon, the ideologue, has been pretty much removed. The only reason Steve Bannon is still in there is because there's a major donor to the Trumps, to Trump, the Mercer family. Look up Rebecca Mercer. They donated a ton of money. They're very close to Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon has a close to majority share in a company, an analytics company that they share together. So the Mercers have been Steve Bannon's angels. And He's got some other supporters. Jeff Sessions is a Steve Bannon guy. And Miller is a Steve Bannon guy. Mnuchin, who I think Bannon worked with at Goldman Sachs, is a Steve Bannon guy. And Wilbur Ross. Those are Steve Bannon's allies inside the Trump organization, inside the Trump cabinet. And everybody else probably would love to see him take a hike. But if you look at all of those characters, it's been Miller, Sessions, and to a large degree, some degree, Mnuchin, who have been under attack by the press. Like, the press kind of leaves Rex Tillerson alone. Have you noticed that? They kind of leave him alone. And they leave a lot of these other characters. Like, nobody ever talks about Ben Carson or Elaine Chao or, you know, all the other people. Let's leave them alone. But it's Sessions, Bannon, Miller, and Mnuchin who take the heat. And I wonder why. It's because ideologically, I think they're different. And Flynn certainly took the heat, and he took the fall. And those guys were probably the most closely aligned with what we would call the United States or America or nationalism, and the other group is more globalist. And they've infiltrated and they've taken over. And now they're getting ready to start a global war. And that's where we are. That's how it has broken down. And it's broken down inside the White House and inside the relationships from the White House to globalist power structures. Ah, boy. Okay, so you're listening to Friday FARcast Part 2. Part 1 got unceremoniously interrupted. How about that? Let me see what else we have here. Okay, hold on. All right, 2:15 p.m. Okay, let's do this. Respond to somebody. All right, let's do that. The joys of Mercury retrograde. Isn't that great? Isn't it fun? There was this one other piece I wanted to read today, and I'm going to try to bring everything together because it's been a fairly disjointed affair on today's show, which I really apologize for. Some of which I didn't have a whole lot to deal with. Oh, by the way, watching Alex Jones try and sell this missile attack has been painfully funny to watch. The logic, the contortions of logic that he puts himself through. It's like now he's having to deal with the fact that he was rapidly frothing for Donald Trump, and now he's got to somehow justify these missile attacks. And watching him go through it, it's worth about 10 minutes of your time. Let me read this here. Trump, just another neocon puppet, backers leaving. This is from RT. Let's see. Once dedicated passengers are now disembarking the Trump train following his administration's actions against Syria. Previous supporters, including Paul Joseph Watson and Laura Ingraham, made public their opposition to the U.S. president's missile strike. InfoWars editor-at-large Watson, whom I've always liked Paul Joseph Watson, tweeted that Donald Trump wasn't Putin's puppet after all, describing him as another deep state neocon puppet. Watson said he would be turning his efforts instead to French presidential candidate Marine Le Pen. Watson spends a fair amount of time in hold on, yes. He spends a fair amount of time in France. So Watson says, I guess Trump wasn't... Okay, I'm officially off the Trump train. It's been fun, lad, but the fun is over. I'll be focusing my efforts on Le Pen, who tried to warn Trump against this disaster. Radio host Laura Ingraham, who spoke at last year's Republican National Convention in support of Trump, tweeted, following the strike on Syria, that the president had made a complete policy change in 48 hours. He did. He did. They got to him, and he was getting ready to leave Assad alone, and all of a sudden, push those buttons. She also shared a story that claimed the strike would fail to prevent any future attacks from Syrian President Bashar Assad. Missiles flying, Rubio's happy, McCain's ecstatic, Hillary's on board, a complete policy change in 48 hours. President Trump just said this is in the vital national security interests of the U.S., of course. Lawyer and filmmaker Mike Cernovich, once a vocal supporter of Trump, online tweeted that Trump supporters do not want war with Syria. I talked about Cernovich in my aborted cast. Today, over 500,000 people have watched my videos and streams. 90% are real Donald Trump supporters. None want war with Superior. Hashtag no more wars. Anyone who claimed Trump had blind loyalty had a wake-up call today. If Hillary Clinton was POTUS, I would not even be bother speaking up. A war would be inevitable. Blah blah blah. Cernovich is weird. I don't know. I don't trust the guy personally. Another prominent Trump supporter, Tim Treadstone, known as Baked Alaska, tweeted that despite being a supporter of the president, his latest actions were not supported by real Trump supporters. USA was not attacked. We're retracting to Syria. 100%. We're okay. People are seeing what's happening. Peel back the layers. Okay, this is. I'm going to try to put this all together in a way that you can wrap your head around. That this is really another iteration of the awakening, a deeper iteration of the awakening, a new level. People praising the Syria attack. Hillary, McCain, Lindsey Graham, Paul Ryan, leftists. People against the attack, quote-unquote, the real Trump supporters. Trump has also been accused of hypocrisy for his decision to participate in an action which could result in the displacement of Syrians, but not to accept them as refugees, as pointed out by many users on Twitter. When you won't let the children be murdered into your country, you can't claim to be acting based on taking a moral stand or moral position. So that was from Konkara Panagiotis. Well, here's George Takei chiming in, the ubiquitous George Takei. Trump on Syria, no child of God should suffer such horror. But no way, nope, they can't come here. Syria is a complex mess. Syria is the new Israel. Have you figured that out yet? Remember how Israel used to have all this strife and tension? Syria is the new Israel. Syria is a complex mess. That's what they used to say about Israel. But we could all agree refugee programs and humanitarian assistance are vital, both of which Trump is cutting. Whatever. Reactions from around the globe were shared on Twitter as details of the actions in Syria. RAC King Abdul II. We are very encouraged with POTUS determination to support Arab and Muslim states in their fight against terrorism. Hashtag JO, hashtag USA. Remember, King Abdul II is supposed to be the guy that's going to take over for Trump. Marine Le Pen, I don't read French, but I can tell she's not into it. So people are falling off the wagon. It's a wake up. It is a wake up. They put Trump over a barrel, and they stuck Jared Kushner inside the White House, and he's become the de facto president. He and Mike Pence. That's what's happening. In a related piece, this goes back to the Jeffrey Epstein and Pedo Isle. So there are people who are talking about how Pedo Isle was basically set up as a honey trap to bring as many people there as possible so they could all be blackmailed. And, of course, Trump had been there on numerous occasions. So I wonder what really is going on. What really went on there. What else do we have here? I talked a little bit about Ivanka Trump meeting with Planned Parenthood. That was just kind of weird. I don't know what went on. Trump said he's very pleased with himself. Here's my favorite politician, Representative Tulsi Gabbard. Trump's attack reckless and short-sighted. Remember, she was there. She'd been to Syria. Unlike Donald Trump, who did not go to Syria. Wouldn't it have been a kind of an interesting wrinkle? Like if Trump had actually gotten off of his ass and gotten on a plane and went to Syria and talked to Assad face to face? Wouldn't it have been kind of an amazing moment? And then instead, he's playing golf with the Prime Minister of Japan, crashing weddings in Mar-a-Lago. Oh, you know, I mean, wouldn't that have been a really interesting thing to do, to meet the man face to face? To go and walk amongst the people that you are about to kill? To look them in the eyes? To see really in the face of those children that you are so concerned about? Wouldn't it have been great to have that kind of moral moment? I mean, hell, even Sean Penn did that. You know, when all the Sturm and Drang was happening with Iraq before we went to war there, Sean Penn went there and he basically, you know, looked at their facilities. He ran his own kind of citizen journalist thing. He did it. Why couldn't Trump do it? Nobody did it. Tulsi Gabbard did it. He didn't. This is her statement. It angers and saddens me that President Trump has taken the advice of war hawks and escalated our legal regime change war to overthrow the Syrian government. This escalation is short-sighted and will lead to more dead civilians, more refugees, the strengthening of Al-Qaeda and other terrorists, and a possible nuclear war between the United States and Russia. This administration has acted recklessly, without care or consideration of the dire consequences of the United States attack in Syria, without waiting for the collection of evidence from the scene of the chemical poisoning. If President Assad is indeed guilty of this horrible chemical attack on innocent civilians, I will be the first to call for his prosecution and execution, execute his ass, by the International Criminal Court. However, because of our attack on Syria, this investigation may now not even be possible, and without such evidence, a successful prosecution would be much harder. You know, they sent everybody into Iraq to look for the chemical weapons and the rods and the yellow cake and all that bullshit. And clearly there was no evidence that Iraq had any of this stuff. And yet they went in anyway. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Even if there's evidence to the contrary, it doesn't matter. They will run their program. But this is it, man. We are waking up. We're waking up. Now, here's the problem. This is the one thing that we have to watch out for. The one thing we have to watch out for is demoralization. Because if you got on the Trump train, right? If you got on it hardcore, and now you're seeing this, you're like, oh, shit. We can't go there. We cannot go there. We must keep our spirits up. We've got to keep our spirits high. Yeah, we can't stick our heads in the ground. That's not going to work. We've got to keep our spirits high. We have to understand and rally around the fact that we are waking up. And our awakening is growing in numbers. Just based on the fact that my broadcast, a guy basically broadcasting out of his home, my broadcast got shut down 7 minutes into the first iteration. And I wonder why. You see, this is how scared these people are. They don't want us to wake up. Because when we wake up, their reign of power is potentially at an end. And we can flip this planet out of the hell realm that it's become. You know, I wanted to talk about this a little bit. And then I've got to sign off because I would have run over my time anyway. But we mentioned this just briefly on the Kitchen Sink broadcast. You should check that out if you haven't found it. I'll put it up on my website today. We talked about this planet that's part of that used to be a planet. It's now the asteroid belt. Some people call it Marduk, others call it Maldek. And this planet got into apparently a war with Mars. An interplanetary war, millions of years ago, right? And Maldek or Marduk got exploded. And so the remnants of that are the asteroid belt. And Mars, which was in the cradle orbit, occupied the orbit, got sucked into the orbit of Marduk Maldek. And Earth, which had been in the orbit where Venus is, moved into the cradle orbit. Well, if that's the case, maybe the cradle orbit has associated with it the qualities of Mars, the vapors of Mars, the Akashic history of Mars inside of this orbit. And so that when we came into the cradle orbit, not only were we able to have this amazing vegetal relationship with the perfect, location from the sun, if you still believe the sun is actually doing something to the planet in a meaningful kind of way, in a heliotropic kind of universe. Yeah, we got all that, but maybe we took on this orbital karma, so to speak, that was left over by Mars. And instead of fighting Saturn, we might be fighting Saturn in a roundabout way, we're fighting amongst ourselves. It's a thought to ponder. As we move into the weekend, you'll read and hear various things. You'll be bombarded by propaganda. Truth will trickle out at various points in time. Some point in time, you'll go onto the internet, YouTube, and try to find some alternative source like this one. And you'll find plenty out there. Plenty that will be able to help you understand what's taking place. But as always, use your head to discern what's real and your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Thanks for hanging in there. This was the Friday FARcast. I'll be back on Sunday night. Knock on wood with the live stream. Have a great weekend.